Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I've got some weird movies for you. Weird movies with weird women in them. Not all of the movies I'm going to talk about are weird movies with weird women in them, but the two main ones are. I'll get a few other things out of the way first, but the two are really interesting films. One from 1930, which makes it 94 years old, and the other one's from 2023, which makes it 12 months old. I've got to thank somebody for a gift that I received. First, Evil Pixie 69 sent me something which is really groovy. They also sent Middle-Aged Geek Girl some stuff for her craft channel, so thank you very much for that. But what I got was Beating the Devil, the making of Night of the Demon, a book about the making of Night of the Demon, which I'm told by some people on Facebook is getting kind of hard to find these days. But Evil Pixie had a spare copy of it, and I got that. Evil Pixie lives in Morecambe in England, and I got a couple of other things, two postcards. One is a nice little bookshop, and the other is the statue of Eric Morecambe from Morecambe. Now, I've seen the statue. I've been there. I've got a photo somewhere of me standing next to the statue of Eric Morecambe. So I love that. Morecambe's a lovely little place, like a lot of seaside towns in England. It's going through a rough patch, but Andy, thank you very much for the kind gifts. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the support of the channel. So I copped that, and wonderful. Love it. I haven't read it all yet. I've read part of it, but I do love it. And again, thank you from Middle-Aged Geek Girl and me. Sorry, from Middle-Aged Geek Girl and I'm a street urchin and my grammar's not always the best. So before I get to the double feature, there's a couple of other things I've been watching, and I thought I'd mention them. I did see Twisters. There's kind of a sequel, remake, reimagining of Twister, done with modern special effects and modern actors. Stars Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell and Anthony Ramos. Directed by Lee Isaac Chung. And it's, at best, I think it's mid. Yes, the special effects are wonderful because any movie you throw a lot of money into these days is going to have wonderful special effects. But this one doesn't have the charm or the charisma of the original movie. A combination of Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, and having people like Philip Seymour Hoffman in the supporting cast of Twister really makes it land. The new one, not so much. People are really raving about Glenn Powell as an actor. I'm still not convinced. I think he's that guy who has watched every Clint Eastwood movie and then pretended to be Clint Eastwood in the mirror. A lot of people disagree. It's up to them to do that, but I can't really see it. So I watched Twisters, and it's kind of watchable. It's really not as good as the first one. And it even emulates certain events. In the first one, you've got the drive-in movie theater that's hit by a twister. In this one, you get a rodeo instead. Everything that's wrong with Hollywood, basically, is Twisters. Then I watched a movie I can recommend with every ounce of my heart. And that's a movie called Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, which is a documentary about the films that Emmerich Pressburger and Michael Powell made together in the middle of the 20th century. It's narrated by Martin Scorsese, who's talking about his relationship with particularly Michael Powell, who was a friend of his for the last 17 years of Powell's life. And it goes through all of the Powell and Pressburger movies. I love this documentary, and the thing is, I watched it the day after I did my YouTube video about documentaries, which cheesed me off no end. I would have loved to have capped off that video with Made in England. But here's my recommendation. It's on Mubi at the moment, I believe, and it may be on a couple of other streaming services. Find a copy of it and watch it. It's just as good as the other documentaries about cinema that Scorsese has done in the past. And it's wonderful in every way. It said everything I felt watching Powell and Pressburger movies. Doesn't mention they're a weird mob, which is the second last movie Michael Powell made. It was one of the two movies he made in Australia along with Age of Consent. But apart from that, Made in England is a movie you should watch, particularly if you're a fan of this channel and you love cinema. I don't think you can go wrong with that. And I don't think there's anybody watching this that won't enjoy it. Then I watched a Netflix film because I was in the mood to watch a Netflix film. And I watched The Union, which stars Mark Wahlberg, Halle Berry, J.K. Simmons, Mike Coulter, directed by Julian Farino. Basically, it's got a nice conceit about it. It's all like all of those mid-budget Netflix spy movies you get. You get any number of them. They get a couple of name actors in there. And they get a few exotic locations. In this case, they get Istria in Croatia. They get London as well. They get Paterson, New Jersey. It's about a working class guy played by Marky Mark, who's recruited for a secret spy organization, which is basically built around working class people, the people don't see, the janitors, the garbage men, all that kind of thing. That's who these spies are, and they've got to get a list which has everybody who ever worked for any intelligence agency in the world on it, and they've got to defeat the bad guys and get that list back. There's some really good stunt work in it. These Netflix films have some really nice car stunts and also gags, falls and things like that. The stunt work and the parkour used in the movie is really good. Halle Berry is pretty good. Marky Mark's no better than he has to be. But it's kind of entertaining. I wouldn't criticize anybody for watching it. If you're in the mood for just like pew pew, fall, and J.K. Simmons yelling at people, The Union's going to be a movie for you. So you might want to watch that. You'll have a bit of fun with it. And then probably 2 weeks later, you'll forget it. So I watched that. And then I watched a French action film, because I am prone to do that. From 1965, it stars Jean Marais and Evil. And it's a movie called The Gentleman from Cocody. And it's a really unusual action film for a few reasons. The first one is, I love Jean Marais in anything, so I'll watch that guy in any movie. But it was filmed totally in 1965 on the Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, which was a French protectorate at one stage, but it recently got its independence. And they made the whole film there. And so you get to see Côte d'Ivoire as it was in 1965. It's about a diplomat played by Jean Marais who helps a woman who's looking for butterflies in the jungle. But what they're actually looking for is a plane that's crashed with a whole bunch of diamonds in it. And there are a whole bunch of bad guys going after the diamonds as well. Lots of really good car stunts in this. This was one of the first movies that the king of car stunts, Remy Julien, did the car stunts for. And you've got these people in these small, shitty 1950s French cars, just doing incredible stunts with them. There are some really weird and wonderful car stunts in there. There's some helicopter stunts as well. And Jean Marais, even though he was in his 50s at the time, very fit guy, did a lot of the stunts himself. And there's scenes where him and Evil are being hauled underneath a helicopter on a rope across the cityscape of the capital of Côte d'Ivoire. Really interesting little film. It's in French. It's got subtitles. It feels a little bit like L'Homme de Rio, that man from Rio, the movie that Belmondo did with Francois Dorliac. But The Gentleman from Cocody, if you can at all find a copy of it, in some places it's called Ivory Coast Adventure, but you might want to check that one out as well, because it's a lot of fun and it's very different from many action films that were being made by America and England at the time. Okay, so on to the main features. 1930, directed by Cecil B. DeMille, the only musical Cecil B. DeMille ever directed, was a movie called Madam Satan, which I enjoyed a lot. You got to remember, this is 94 years old, so it's not going to be built like a 21st century movie in any way. It stars Kay Johnson as Angela, a wealthy woman who has a philandering husband called Bob, played by Reginald Denny. If you don't know who Reginald Denny is, if you remember the Batman movie from 1966, Reginald Denny played Commodore Schmidlap, who gets kidnapped and the Penguin disguises himself as Commodore Schmidlap. That's Reginald Denny. Bob's got a girlfriend played by Lillian Roth. Her name's Trixie. And he and his best mate, Jimmy, played by Roland Young, are trying to hide the philandering from Angela. Now, Angela knows about this because the two guys come out drunk as a skunk, and they're in the newspapers because Bob's crashed a car. And in the newspaper article, it says he was with his wife, but his wife was actually at home. So Jimmy and Bob try to hide this from Angela. It doesn't work, and Angela is righteously pissed off about this. There's a lot of funny stuff with the two drunk guys. It's not played at all seriously. Angela decides they're breaking up, and Bob decides he's moving out of home. Now, Angela loves Bob. He's a pretty handsome-looking rooster, and she goes and confronts Trixie. But Jimmy pretends that Trixie is his girlfriend and not Bob's. There's a lot of French farce kind of stuff going on there, which is a bit of fun. And then Jimmy decides he's going to have a big masquerade ball on a Zeppelin. And that indeed happens. They've got a Zeppelin tied to a mooring mast in New York City. And this enormous masquerade ball takes place on there. There's elaborate costumes. There's dancers doing a dance about the progress of mechanical technology. There's all sorts of beautiful women in costumes. There's ugly men in costumes. Everything is going really well. And just as they're doing a beauty contest, a mysterious woman called Madame Satan turns up in a mask and in a slinky costume. She's got a French accent, and she charms all the men on this Zeppelin. Of course, it is Angela in disguise. There's no way the audience doesn't know that. And so Angela seduces Bob, and they start kind of flirting with each other outrageously. There's an auction of the beautiful women and their company for the evening, not in any sexual way, but just their company for the evening. And Bob pays a lot of money for Madame Satan. And just as everything's coming to a head, and Angela reveals herself to Bob as being his wife and not Madame Satan, lightning strikes the mooring tower for the Zeppelin, and it breaks loose. And this suddenly turns into a disaster movie. And the crew are getting parachutes for everybody. They're trying to get everybody into the harnesses for the parachutes. All sorts of chaos ensues. There are enormous sets crashing down. There's people jumping out of the Zeppelin and landing in weird places in New York City. One of them lands in a crap game in Harlem. One guy lands in the zoo in a lion's cage. Lots of weird and wonderful shit. This is a mad, over-the-top movie. The production values are fantastic. The model work's fantastic. The leading actors are all charming and silly. And it's got this big disaster piece in it. Cecil B. DeMille just throws everything at this movie. It was the most expensive movie made in Hollywood in 1930. And it's a lot of fun. As a musical, it's kind of mid because they don't actually pace it as a musical. In musicals, you get the musical numbers spaced regularly and you can see where they're leading in, and the musical numbers inform character and plot and things like that. Not so much as that in this one, but Madame Satan's an interesting film and a bit of fun, and I really enjoyed watching it. And the idea of having parachutes where you just wear a harness, clip it onto a parachute that's in a tube at one of the windows of the Zeppelin, and you just jump out is an interesting conceit. And I kind of like it. Of course, Bob and Angela get back together, and Jimmy has some interesting moments as well. A lot of fun, good actors playing well, not to be taken seriously at all, but if you're in the mood for like a pre-code Hollywood movie that's just a light police fluff, Madame Satan's a lot of fun. The interesting thing is that censors really had a go at Cecil B. DeMille about this one, and they had to change a lot of the women's costumes because they're a lot flimsier, and some of them were even see-through before the censors came in and they made them change it for the film. And the big scenes on the Zeppelin were originally filmed in colour, but the colour prints of that have since been lost, so everything's in black and white in the existing prints of the movie. But Madame Satan, recommend it. Just, a light bagatelle of a movie from 1930. Then we get to the movie from 2023, and it's a movie I've got to be careful about because if I even steered anywhere into spoilers, it would totally root the film for you. And I don't want to do that. It's a movie directed by J.T. Molnar, and it's a crime drama called Strange Darling. So it's Willa Fitzgerald as a woman called the Lady, and the characters only have very vague names, the two lead characters. And Kyle Gallner playing a guy that the movie calls the Demon. And the movie is in 6 chapters, which are not shown sequentially. They're shown in a very specific order. And there's also an epilogue. And the first chapter, and this is in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling it, we see the lady running across a meadow. She's been injured. She's wearing a red dress, and she's fleeing the demon who is following her with a shotgun. And they jump to a previous chapter, which is also in the trailer, where the demon and the lady are sitting in a car outside a motel, and they're and she's deciding whether she wants to go into the motel room with him. And they talk about the dangers of women picking up guys in bars and doing this kind of stuff. And she actually asks him at one point whether he's a serial killer or not. There's some really sharp dialogue in here. In some ways, it reminds me of Pulp Fiction in that there's a non-sequential narrative in it. And also the dialogue is really important. And the way the actors play the dialogue is really important. And Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner do it fantastically well. When the lady flees from the demon, she ends up at the house of a couple of Sasquatch-obsessed old hippies, played by Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hirsch. And I like that bit. Those two characters are really fully fleshed out, even though they're not in the film for very long. I'm not going any further into spoilers than that. That's your setup. The movie is great. The action works well. The reveal works well. The plotting works well. The chapters cut off at the perfect times. It's an incredibly well scripted movie. It's shot in 35mm on film. And oddly enough, the cinematographer is an actor. Giovanni Ribisi is a cinematographer in this movie. And the cinematography looks great. It's beautiful saturated colors all the way through the movie. The acting is totally on point. The script's there. It's a really fine crime action film all the way through to the end of the epilogue. It just grips you and holds you there. And you should see it. I know Red Letter Media have reviewed the movie and given it glowing reviews, and rightly so. But I'm not going into spoilers. Go in as cold as you can, which is about as much as I've given you, which is all in the trailer. And just go for the experience of this film. It is something really incredible. I'm going to pick up a Blu-ray copy of it when it's released here in Australia. I don't think it's going to get a 4K release here, but it will get a Blu-ray release, and I'll definitely want a copy of it because I think it's one of the best films I've seen this year. And the acting from people who aren't really well known as actors. Kyle Gallner's had a career as a character actor. Willa Fitzgerald's been on some TV series. Of course, you've got Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hirsch in there. But you want to go in on this one cold. Beautifully shot. The cinematography by Ribisi is good. The JT Molnar's direction is fantastic. You need to see this movie. No questions asked. Just see it. I think it's coming out on streaming in most places. And if you're a physical media collector, you'll probably want to pick up a copy of it on disc yourself. So that's what I've got for you this time around. Weird and wonderful things. Some new, some old. All of them weird. All of them unusual. All of them not big tentpole mainstream movies. And sometimes you need that. You just need to get something that's going to see you through the evening. And you sit down with your snacks and your drinks and just go for it. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like because it does help the channel. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when new videos are coming out. Next up, of course, we've got Science Fiction Saturday. And I'm looking across the shelves here. I think I know what I'm going to do for Science Fiction Saturday. And they're going to be well-known science fiction movies this time around. Then, of course, we get the Monday video, we get the Wednesday video, we get Science Fiction Saturday again. And we all go around in a circle like La Ronde without the VD, which is a deep cut classical film reference. Anyway, until all of that stuff happens, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch Madam Satan and watch Strange Darling. You're going to have a bit of fun with both of them. And I'll catch you next time.